So, hello again. I'm Eric Kane. I've been following the Wizards of the Coast open gaming license fiasco for the last few weeks, couple weeks really. It's quite an interesting situation. It kind of reminds me of back in the day when they came out with 4th edition D&D, and there was, quite a bit of backlash, and then Paizo started Pathfinder based on the D&D 3.5 rule set, and a lot of people jumped ship and went over to Pathfinder because it was more like classic D&D than 4th edition. 4th edition, of course, was sort of built around miniatures. It was a minis game, and it was designed really to be very profitable for Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. Sell a lot of minis, sell a lot of rule books, sell a lot of cards, really just monetize the crap out of it and make it. And, I will say this. I think that as a minis game, 4th edition is actually kind of cool. As a spin-off to D&D, to the role-playing game, it would have been kind of a neat system if they had just created a new game in the Dungeons and Dragons, brand, but not as 4th edition, but as something else, and kept iterating on 3rd edition as they ended up doing, of course, with 5th edition, which walked back a lot of the 4th edition stuff and is much more similar to 3rd edition with plenty of its own rules. But yeah, this is when Pathfinder ended up kind of getting big and becoming a viable option for people who liked D&D, didn't want to necessarily play a lot of the more indie type stuff out there, but wanted also to have the way that that they had grown comfortable with over the previous decade or however long 3rd edition had been out. I started playing D&D with 2nd edition, so honestly, I was one of those guys that liked THAC0 and thought 3rd edition was not okay. I wanted second edition, advanced D&D, whatever, to come back, to hit Armor Class 0 is my jam. Now, I have played D&D very little since 3rd edition. I like to make my own games, so I've made a lot of my own games. I like to play indie games. My 2 favorite games to play are Burning Wheel and Dungeon World, which is a mod of Apocalypse World, which is also really cool. Those are great games. That's what my gaming group does a lot, though right now we are playing Pathfinder 2nd edition. I personally like running either Burning Wheel or Dungeon World, and I like playing those games. They are very... so Burning Wheel is very crunchy. There's a lot of rules, but you can play it pretty light. And it's really great at character building, and it's really great at sort of developing interesting worlds and stories and stuff that doesn't have to rely on combat so much as the role-playing side of things. And but it does have different kinds of combat systems that are pretty cool. And it has a duel of wit system that is great for resolving arguments and debates and things like that. Dungeon World is very light, rules light, which I personally really like because I really like to DM, and I think personally I'm pretty imaginative DM, and I like to come up with stuff on the fly. I don't prepare a lot. So I really like the way that Dungeon World allows simple rolling. It's a cool system. Dungeon World is basically like you have 2d6 and you roll, and if you get 6 and below, you fail what you're trying to do. And if you get 7 through 9, you succeed, but it's a partial success and something can go wrong. And if you get 10 or above, it's a success, and you get to whatever you're trying to do, you accomplish within reason. You don't just kill the dragon, but maybe you hit the dragon. Maybe the dragon still has way too much armor and you can't actually do damage to him, but you find that out. So it allows for a lot of cool things, like let's say you're in a fight and you roll a 7. The game master can say, all right, roll damage, but then can deal damage back to you, or can introduce a complication. Or if you miss, instead of just taking damage from the goblin, maybe your sword breaks, or maybe, the ground opens up and you fall down a shaft. You have a lot of power as the game master to introduce complications and hard choices and things like that, rather than just dealing damage or following set rules. I mean, it is a rule, but you have a lot more sort of flexibility. And the DM actually, or the GM actually, never rolls in that game except for damage. You're never rolling like to hit. It's always a reaction to the player's rolls. Really cool game. If you haven't played it, I definitely recommend it. And then Burning Wheel is a dice pool system, so it's, you know, you level up your skills, and then you'll roll the number of dice that you have in your skill plus different helping dice and things like that, trying to beat a target number or a versus check. And that's a really fun game. It really relies a lot on things like beliefs and instincts, and playing those beliefs and instincts that you have for your character. So I like systems that introduce things like, as part of your character, things like flaws that are built into your character and your role playing, or, you know, impulses that get you into trouble. I like all the things that cause problems in games. And so that's why I haven't really been interested in D&D. I think 5th edition did do some cool stuff with advantage and disadvantage dice, sort of borrowing very, very conservatively from the indie scene. And now we come to this open game license. The OGL 1.0A was going to get thrown out. They're going to introduce a new gaming license that looked much more restrictive. Would really put a clamp down on a lot of third-party publishers and content creators, and so there was all this backlash. And after weeks of really poor communication and really not so great behavior on Wizards of the Coast part, finally they came out and said, "All right, we're gonna play test this, and we're gonna get a better system. We're gonna put it in the Creative Commons." And then today, they said, "Never mind. We're not going to change the open game. We're not getting rid of the one that was in place. We're actually just going to put the rule set, though, the core system into the Creative Commons." And so it's actually going to be even more open and even better than it was before. And we're not touching it. We're not changing it, which is a great, great, wonderful thing. It's a victory for the D&D community and for open source and for all of this. But you still have to remember that this is Hasbro and this is Wizards of the Coast. And, you know, like, they may have learned their lesson now, and they may be like slinking away with their tail between their legs, but this won't be the last foray into some sort of sneaky, shady bullshit. So vigilance is good, but also more so than just vigilance is, you know, this is a good time to say, well, D&D's fine and all, but there's so many games out there. There are just so many different games, from Savage Worlds to all these different indie games that I haven't even tried. I mean, I own books for these random weird, like, Norse tabletop games that I haven't even played, but I like the books. I like the artwork. I like to just read about games. There's weird barbarian, like, indie stuff like Riddle of Steel. There's other spin-offs from Burning Wheel, like Torchbearer or Mouseguard, which I have both of those. Actually, in the first edition of Torchbearer, they actually named an item after me, like the Cloak of Cain, because I actually broke the story on Torchbearer, which was pretty cool. That was years ago. Really cool game about dungeon delving and very, very crunchy, like, inventory management stuff. And then there's Pathfinder, and it's crazy. You've got to hand it to them. They've done a great job of capitalizing on this, and they've sold out of the core rulebook for second edition. An 8-month supply they sold out over the last few weeks as people jumped ship from D&D and hopped over to Pathfinder. And like I said, my gaming group right now is playing Pathfinder second edition, and I enjoy it. I'm playing a gnome barbarian, but I call him a gnome bardbarian because he is a performer. He likes to, he comes from the gladiator pits, so he's an entertainer. And I want to multi-class him eventually as a bard barbarian. So his name is Mini Maximus, the gnomish barbarian. He's a chameleon gnome, so he can blend in with things, but he also has giant instinct, which eventually, as he levels up, he'll be able to actually grow from this tiny little gnomish size into like a much bigger size when he rages. But right now, he still gets to hold a giant two-handed greatsword. So I like that. I like my character. He's pretty cool. We haven't played this campaign much, but we're actually going to play it some tonight. And I don't really know. Like, I guess that's the point of this video, is that there's so much more than D&D out there. D&D just, because it's been around so long, because it's such a catchy name, Dungeons and Dragons, D&D. It's almost like the Kleenex of role-playing games, right? You just refer to tissues that you blow your nose with as Kleenex, even if it's not the Kleenex brand. Or you know, like, if you get your brand to that level where it just becomes, you know, the word associated with the thing, then you're, you know, that's why I think that, of course, even with all this controversy, a huge part of the D&D community doesn't really even care or hasn't even thought about it or got upset, but we'll just go back to it. And that's cool. Like, hopefully that will help the next edition of D&D be great and good and wonderful and all that. But there are other options, and obviously people are moving and gravitating towards those. Pathfinder's great, but check out some of the other stuff. Check out Burning Wheel. Check out Dungeon World. Check out Apocalypse World. Apocalypse World is more like a there's mods. I started a Sword and Sorcery Barbarian campaign with that, but you can also play like Mad Max style. It's really more of a Mad Max, like apocalypse, like post-apocalyptic game. And yeah, so this is also my request to you. Shout out in the comments. Let me know what games that you like to play when you're playing with your tabletop group. What's good? What should I check out? Anything new? Are you playing any board games? I just got the Darkest Dungeon board game. Most recent game that we played was a game called Veiled Fate, which was pretty cool. I need to get into Descent. I'm waiting for my Frosthaven board game to show up. I also got Hell: The Last Saga. I kickstart a lot of board games. So yeah, let me know in the comments, and let me know what you think of this whole OGL craziness. And yeah, thanks for watching. Peace.